But I think that the way people really need to utilize this is as a warning, so that if you haven't made sure that your food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, if that is not secure, get it done. What are you waiting for? My prayer is that this is a wake-up call.
Friends, just a quick word from this interview's sponsor, Virtual Shield. In a recent news report, web browsers, Chrome, Firefox, and Safari are sending users browsing history and personal identifying information to external servers, and it's a worrisome trend. These 3 browsers were ranked in the lowest privacy category the study conducted. Chances are that you're using one of these browsers when you surf the internet. Imagine someone you don't know seeing what you search and when on a daily basis. And knowing where you live sounds creepy, right? This is why using Virtual Shield VPN is the recommended choice to help reduce any type of privacy risk. Here, let me show you how easy it is. You just go to virtualshield.com or the Google Play Store and download the Virtual Shield free 30-day trial, install it, and click Connect. Now that I'm connected, my IP address is one coming out of Chicago, and I don't live anywhere near Chicago, Illinois. It's March Madness month, and to celebrate, Virtual Shield is offering a special of 30% off all VPN plans and all premium add-ons. So sign up for a free 30-day trial to Virtual Shield VPN and see what the hype's about. You have nothing to lose and your privacy to keep. I'll leave the link below this video. Friends, thanks so much for hitting play. It's great to have you back. Boy, I got to tell you how strange life is. Things have changed so much in just the past 6 weeks. I last spoke to Lynette Zang 6 weeks ago, and I just checked that interview, and we didn't even talk about coronavirus. COVID-19 wasn't even on our radar screen, and in just the last 6 weeks, the Wall Street Journal has done a hit piece on me for daring to question the true source of COVID-19. We don't believe it magically was born in a wet market in China. Whole lot more to the story, but the Wall Street Journal doesn't want you to know that. They also don't want you to realize that the shelves at Costco are emptying out. No toilet paper, no bottled water. People are really starting to worry. And Lynette, as you know, 6 weeks ago, this wasn't even on our radar, and we were already concerned about the possibility of an economic collapse.
Exactly. You know, we've talked a lot over the years, and one of the things that as always we've talked about consistently is the fact that when everything gets too expensive for the central bankers to support, that they won't support it. But of course, they need a crisis to justify the next move that they want to make. And if it's a virus like this, well, who are you going to point your finger at? Can't point your finger at the central banks, and you can't point your finger at the government, even though, so, I mean, you probably have more evidence of what they've done than I would, but nothing would surprise me. I'll say it that way. Nothing would surprise me.
Yeah, reading between the lines of what you're saying, I get it. The bottom line is that this is a very convenient black swan for them, because you're right. The blame gets shifted to anyone but the guilty parties, right? I mean, the central banks are going to get away with destroying our economy. They just cut interest rates 50 basis points the other day. The stock market went down 700 or 800 points. But the real concern for those of us paying attention is China is still shut down. And until this pandemic is contained, which right now it's not, Los Angeles just declared a state of emergency. Until this thing is contained, the economy moving forward looks very, very shaky, and I would think that the Dow is going to have quite a correction ahead of it.
Yes, and then no, because one of the things that they're starting to talk about again is bringing out all that TALF and TARP and all of those old vegetable soups that they used in 2008 to inject capital directly into the vein, so to inject that morphine right into the vein of the banks. And they're also talking about helicopter money. In Hong Kong, they've already done something like that. It's kind of like the cash for clunkers that they did back in 2008. Give those people at the bottom rung of the totem pole economically cash, because they're going to go out and spend it. The problem is that it doesn't create an ongoing stimulation, but they're talking about all sorts of really interesting things. So yes, I do think that the market is going to, I don't know what it's going to do, but all of this direct injection by a globally coordinated central bank, World Bank, IMF, that are saying that they are just going to open up the money printing spigots, that money has to go someplace. So I've been saying for a minute now, and I think we might have talked about this 6 weeks ago, that we're in that melt up phase. So they're going to do anything. And what I know, I'm sounding a little disjointed, and part of it is there's just so much information that's coming so fast right now. But part of what I'm wondering and thinking about is the Fed just dropped interest rates, the Fed funds rates 50 basis points. Well, they know darn well that that's not going to inspire people to get back on an airplane. Like I was supposed to go next week to New Orleans with my sister and brother-in-law, etc., and we canceled. We're not going. So, and just because they dropped interest rates 50 basis points does not mean that now I'll go. But what it might be them attempting to do is drive people back into those risk assets to attempt to support the stock market, because it's all relative. And with the 10-year now trading consistently between yesterday, I know we're going to date this a little bit, but on, what's today's Wednesday? On Tuesday, falling below 10% for the first time in history. And so far today, it made a feeble attempt to go above 1%, but a very feeble attempt. It has not made it. So now you've got the 10-year Treasury bond, which is the foundation of the global markets, trading below 1%. That should scare everybody, frankly. Yeah. Because it's an indication of how weak things really are. And just him doing that in a surprise move like that, they've never done a preemptive 50 basis point cut ever. The only time they've done those big cuts is in the middle of a crisis.
It's interesting to hear that you've changed your behavior based on this coronavirus. And here's the thing, here's the problem with the economy moving forward. Even if this thing doesn't get nearly as bad as we've seen it get in Wuhan, China. Right now, guys, by the way, Beijing, I believe, is still pretty much shut down. I'm seeing reports that Seattle is a ghost town. As I look at Drudge Report here, let me just read a few headlines. LA officials declare emergency, confirm 6 new coronavirus cases. Here's another one calling downtown Seattle, a ghost town. Meanwhile, a man in a mask has passed out on a New York City sidewalk. What else here? 2/3 would turn down a free cruise, Lynette. And here's one from the World Health Organization says fatality rates higher than thought. Now, the other thing I would just add real quickly, and I'll get your response, is that even my wife, she told me last night when I got back from Costco that she's hearing that it's really no worse than the flu and that people are overreacting. Now, when I was at Costco last night, the shelves were empty, no bottled water, no toilet paper. The same was true on Sunday. I went back yesterday because they said on Tuesday they were getting more toilet paper and bottled water. So I was there at 7:30 at night and it was all gone again. So here's my point. A lot of people feel like my wife, because they're hearing official narratives, that there is no major problem. This thing isn't much worse than the flu. My question to you is, if people start to panic and start to get worried in mass, will all of the shelves at Costco look like the toilet paper and bottled water shelves?
And the answer would be yes. Now, did I have to rush out, me personally have to rush out for toilet paper or bottled water? No, because I already had it. And that's the point that you and I have been talking about all the time. A black swan event is something that you cannot foresee. So when is the time to get prepared? When the crisis is hitting or unfolding like it is right now? Because yes, your shelves are going bare, and not only for the toilet paper and that, but also for the Clorox wipes. Sari was telling me that Clorox wipes, you couldn't find them anywhere. And of course the masks and all of this. So, look, do I think that they're going to end up coming up with a vaccine? I do. Even though I canceled New Orleans, I have a Hawaii trip coming up in June. So that's still kind of far enough away for me to say, okay, let's wait and see. But I think that the way people really need to utilize this is as a warning, so that if you haven't made sure that your food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, if that is not secure, get it done. What are you waiting for? This should be my prayer is that this is a wake-up call, because when they start pushing those markets up, that money's got to go someplace that they're printing, and they're talking about doing it on a globally coordinated basis and opening up all sorts of credit lines, because that way the businesses that frankly shouldn't survive, like, I don't know, those 14% of the S&P, according to the Bank for International Settlements, are zombie corporations that shouldn't be alive anyway in a true capitalist system. They wouldn't have survived. But, how long, with interest rates where they are the banks going to continue to be willing to extend them more credit so that they can pay the interest and some of the principal on the debt that they already can't pay? Because that's what a zombie company is. It should be a wake-up call to every single one of your listeners, my listeners, and even people that aren't listening. They need to understand that, even though they will likely find a vaccine, and it may or may not be as bad as we think. Time is going to tell, but I think in some ways, if people are paying proper attention, it's a gift.
Well, here's what concerns me. So if we take a look at what's happening in Italy, they've now closed all schools and universities because this thing is spreading. I think the official death toll in Italy is 107 people. My concern about this thing as it pertains to the economy and the livelihood of everyone listening is the fact that in this country, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think our economy, it's essentially a 70% service-based economy. So that means for this economy to continue to chug along, people have to go to the movie theaters and the sporting events. They have to go to the restaurants, right? They have to support their local establishments. So many of these businesses in this country that make up the economy are small businesses. These are businesses that cannot survive if for 30, 60, or 90 days, the population is sheltering in place or self-quarantined.
Exactly.
That's my concern, Lynette. When you and I have been talking over the years, and me talking with Bill Holter and so many other people, Harley Schlanger, about the inevitability of a collapse of the US dollar based on debt. We're moving towards $25 trillion in debt. How in the world does this economy service that kind of debt if people have to shelter in place for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months? How do small businesses survive? What happens to people who, even if you work for a corporation like Target or Walmart, what happens when those businesses begin to collapse and now those companies can't pay their employees who are all at home? I just don't understand how this is going to play out. It doesn't look good.
Well, exactly. And the other piece of it, although maybe I think this is helicopter money coming, because it's not just if you work for Walmart or one of those big box stores, but what if you're driving Uber and Lyft? And if you don't work, you don't get paid. So what happens to all of those people that frankly are living marginally anyway? This is going to be devastating. And so what they're going to have to do, and like Hong Kong has already given, I think it's like not quite $1,300 to each one of its citizens, hoping that they will go out and spend it. And they may, because they may need to. However, how does that fix anything? So if we give them, that goes back to what we've been talking about a long time, is that basic universal income. That's what that's going to do. They're going to be forced to give everybody a basic universal income. And what does that do to the value of the dollar when they do that and just give money away? It has less value, less and less and less. And here's really what I think scares the elites the most, is this loss of confidence. Now, what happens if the markets continue to react in opposition to what the central banks want, right? I mean, they did that because there's this show of solidarity with the global central banks. We're all going to get together and work together in a coordinated way. So don't worry, we have your back. Even if they're giving out universal basic income, where we start with the vegetable soup, TARP, TALF, and all of that for the corporations. Banks are lobbying to reduce their reserve requirements and remove those few little other things that they had to adhere to after Dodd-Frank and the crash. Well, let's get rid of that because it's all about us gambling and making money and all of that. So it's much deeper than that, because there's your melt up and there's your hyperinflation, and then ultimately there's the crash. Keep in mind that Venezuela, they had the best performing stock market in the world, 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And then what happened to it? They lopped off zeros. So you're right. If people can't go out and work, well, you know, that means that they can't pay their mortgage, or they can't pay their rent, and they can't buy food, and they can't go to the stores, they can't go to the theater. So there's your excuse for modern money theory, helicopter money.
Yeah. Well, what was really troubling me when I was at Costco yesterday, now, of course, I think we're going to post this video 24 hours after we recorded it, so it goes back 2 days now. But what was really concerning to me, and I was really troubled by it, is when you think of the inner cities, and not even just the inner cities, when you just think about people who are on the bubble, living paycheck to paycheck, people who are even struggling more than that, people who are having a hard time feeding their kids.
Yes.
They can't prepare. They can't go to Costco and buy a bunch of stuff to try to have at least 30, 60, 90 days worth of food on hand. And so what really is scary about this coronavirus, which I do believe firmly is a engineered virus, I believe it is a bioweapon. China evidently believes that as well. It's far more likely that it leaked or was deliberately released from that level 4 bioweapons lab in Wuhan, China, than it spontaneously was born out of the wet market. So
Yeah.
my point is, though, about all of this, guys, is that this is really the sum of all fears if it plays out the way it's played out in Wuhan. Because you and I have been concerned about an economic collapse for a very long time, but an economic collapse brought on by a pandemic that is killing people around you it's just truly the sum of all fears. I can't think of anything worse.
Sean, I hate to say this. I mean, I seriously hate to say this, but depopulation has been like one of the elite's goal. And so this, you know, I mean, at this juncture anyway, it only seems to be impacting or killing people that are their immune system, their system is compromised and they're older. So that's why it's really important to make sure that you're eating really well and you know, you do supplements to support your immune system. And that's really what I'm doing, you know, primarily for me, is I just really take good care of my system so I'm as strong as possible. But you're absolutely right. And when people are hungry, they make choices, and they can't feed their children. They make choices that they would not otherwise make. And it's really scary. But even if, let's say that they get their arms around this, let's say that it doesn't turn out a whole lot worse than where it is right now. And that's what I really hope is going to happen, that they're going to, boom, come up with a vaccine, and everything is going to be, at least with the people, just fine. Well, the economic damage, frankly, is already done. Because even with the markets imploding like they did last week, when they dropped something like 4,000 points, we are still in the second most expensive stock market in history. And forget the bond market. You know, I mean, with interest rates on the 10-year, I can't get over it. I never thought that I would see this piece in my lifetime. I watch the bond markets. It's a much bigger bond market. You've got the foundation of the global markets in clear distress, under 1%. And they have no more firepower. So here's the thing. What if what they're attempting to do, drive people back to risk assets or create some level of confidence. What if it doesn't work? The only thing holding everything together is public confidence. But look what's happening in Iran because of the poor handling of the coronavirus there and other things. I mean, let's face it, everybody was in trouble way before we even heard about the coronavirus. But their politicians and their central bankers, well, they're quaking in their boots right now because the public is angry. And I think, and so in China as well, you know, so that's really for the elites. The big issue is that loss of confidence. That's what they're trying desperately to reverse because it was already underway before this even happened.
Yeah. Well, I just jotted something down, and what I wrote is this: 28 days later. I think there was a movie, a zombie apocalypse movie called 28 Days Later. And what really is troubling me, again, I don't mean to make this all gloom and doom, but the reality of this thing is very, very concerning because the incubation period they originally thought was 14 days. Now they think it may be 24 to 28 days incubation period.
Yep.
So you mentioned the mishandling of this thing in Iran. Well, I would like to point out the mishandling of this thing here in the United States. They're not doing anything in the airports. There's precious little actual testing going on. They released the Diamond Princess people on that quarantined boat in Japan and brought them back here. And there's
Did they
a 20
not quarantine them when they got back here, or they felt that was enough of the quarantine?
Well, I think the thinking at that point was that it's a 14-day quarantine. So anybody that didn't test positive on the boat after the 14 days and they were still testing negative, they got to go home. But here's my point. If the incubation period on this thing is even 20 days or 24 days, you and I are going to have to talk in another month, and we're going to have to see where we're at. Because if you think it's been mishandled in Iran, take a look at how it's being handled here in the United States. There's nothing happening, really. And I don't want it to be a police state. I don't want temperature checks at all the airports. But that's what they're doing in Russia. I don't see any of that strategy being implemented here. So, again, not trying to cause a panic. I just want people to really think about this and process this. Because if a panic begins, all of those shelves at Costco that are now full of food will be empty.
Yep. Absolutely. And I don't even know, hopefully it doesn't have to get that bad. We're already seeing that. We're already seeing, it starts slow and then it goes really, really fast. And I see part of the problem is people think they always have time. They always have time. There will always be that opportunity because, of course, they can always go to the grocery store. They can always go here. They can always, when they go to the grocery store, get anything that they want. But you get to a point where you take whatever you can get because it has more value to you as a tool of barter. And it's not, aside from the doom and gloom, there are opportunities that will present, but not yet. But that's not entirely true because, frankly, physical gold and silver are still super cheap. And we can get anything that we want, but that too will shift. Just like it did in 2008. I mean, most companies couldn't get anything. And even us, we could get pretty much whatever we wanted. But we had some delays that went out 3 months. This time, I don't think they're going to sell it to us unless they have it on hand. Because between then and now, there's been an awful lot of accumulating going on. And I just don't think you're going to have the availability. And actually colloidal silver or even colloidal gold is a really good I'm not saying this right because I'm not medical, but it is a really good to consume for you. It boosts your immune system. It's a microbial or something like that. I'm definitely not medical, so don't take my word for this. But it is universally barterable. But toilet paper is too. You just said toilet paper, the shelves are barren. Well, yeah. And that happens to be a really good tool of barter, for those that don't have a lot, except you can't get it now because you waited too long. But the shelves will will come back again. And, but yeah, I mean, I hope it doesn't, I don't think it's going to look like Wuhan, but who the heck knows?
That's right. Well, here's the thing, and I've said this repeatedly to my guests. I've said this repeatedly over the years because trust me, I get people in the comments saying, bring on the collapse, bring on the collapse. We need the system to go down. My buddy Chris Dwayne says that all the time. And I've said, you know what?
I don't want it.
In practice, in reality, if a collapse happens, none of us are going to like it. It's not going to be fun. It could be hell on earth. Now you take a collapse and you combine it with a pandemic where people are dropping like flies. And again, it's the sum of all fears. So I would really advise people, yeah, get some colloidal silver. That's a great piece of advice, Lynette. Also vitamin D and liposomal vitamin C. At least those three things. Of course, others will weigh in the comments below with ways to protect yourself and boost your immunity so you can hopefully stay healthy and stay safe. As we round out this conversation, Lynette, you mentioned silver and gold. I just want to say that on Tuesday of this week, as the Dow, I think, was down around 750 points, at one point during the day, gold and silver spiked. And if you looked at the charts, they both spiked tremendously at the exact same time, which again, I think speaks to the fact that silver, despite its price, is a very important precious metal. Now we know that they have crushed the price of silver with all of their paper manipulation via the comics, etc. In my view, Lynette, if silver doesn't break free and move far, 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 far higher over the next year or two, or even the next few months, depending on how bad this thing gets, it will never move higher because I just don't understand how they can continue to cap it at the way they do.
You know, I love you like the honey loves bees or bees love honey, but I would disagree with that because as long as they can keep the markets afloat, then it benefits the central bankers to suppress the prices of gold and silver. Gold's the primary currency metal, silver's the secondary currency metal, and it's used globally. However, having said that, when it is time to reset the system, and this could certainly be big enough excuse, you know, we've got the pension crisis, all of this coming to a head right now, so never let a good crisis go to waste. But keep in mind that at the end of the day, in order to reset the system, they reset the fiat, so in this country, dollars, or wherever you are, that's just government-based money, against real money. And even though gold will, history tells us, will, you know, outperform, and I say that with hesitancy because you should not be buying gold or silver as simply a trade to convert into that garbage fiat. But I think both of them, at the end of the day, that's what the government needs to happen and the central bankers need to happen. So yeah, as long as it's a market-driven thing, you're probably right because it benefits governments for you not to own silver, not to own gold, because then your wealth is still in the system and it's easy to take away from you without, inflated away, without you even realizing it. But, you know, this is definitely, it makes it so critical to own both. And I personally don't give a rat's patootie about what it does in terms of dollars, because I know at the end of the day, it's going to save me. It's going to save my children because it's a tool that has full market participation, manufacturing, medicine, all over the place. I mean, it's used, both gold and silver, used in every single aspect of the economy. Nothing else says that. What else does? Nothing. So I take advantage of it, and I know how frustrating that it's been for people, but that's because we're impatient. And these things, they can't do it. You know, it's slow until it's fast. Yeah. So, yeah, I'd say just accumulate silver. And especially if you're limited in your budget, you know, at 17, 18 bucks an ounce, it's a gift. And with spot, even at 16, I think it's somewhere near 1640 at the moment, it's a gift. Both of them are severely undervalued. This is the opportunity that's presenting right now when people have to sell their silver and gold to meet margin calls. Take advantage of it. Take advantage of it, please. It's at least as important as toilet paper.
Yeah. All right.
Probably more.
Yeah. All right. Well, just to recap, I think you said earlier in the interview, the Fed has never cut rates by 50 basis points in one felt swoop. Is that correct?
Unless it's been in the middle of a crisis.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, the point I just want to make is that obviously the Fed, the powers that be, are panicked, and
Yes.
they want to keep confidence in the system. But remember, the whole system is built on confidence, and it's a bit of a con game, because once confidence goes, the very thin thread that is holding our civilization together in this economic system together could go poof.
Exactly.
Could just vanish overnight, could just disappear, and the whole system could come down. And I don't wish it, Lynette. I swear to God, I don't wish it. I know some people listening say, bring it on. I completely disagree with that, because unless they have a just and fair and equitable news system ready to go in the background, which you and I both know it won't be. I don't think it will be. It'll be a banker system for the bankers. That's what they want. They want a one world government system to roll out. But unless it's a fair and justice system built on honest money and national sovereignty, if we don't get that, then we get more bankers' chains, and that's the last thing any of us want. So, anyway.
Can I just make a little point here too?
Sure.
Because remember, the central banks were already freaking out over the repo market since September, and they've been injecting massive amounts of money in here. But I'm 100%, this is a con game. It is all about confidence. And if you're right that the new system is as corrupt, and that's what they want, it's as corrupt and controlled by the same people as it is right now, that makes owning physical gold and silver completely out of the system that much more important.
Yeah.
And what we do here is we have a strategy based upon those repeatable patterns. And it's one I created for myself. And then everybody here has been trained in it, and we execute it. And, if you haven't gotten your own plan together, then you need to. So you can find us on YouTube. You can Google my name, Lynette Zang, or itmtrading.com. And you can call us at 888-696-4653. We are here to be of service, and we're all working really hard right now. Phones are busy.
All right. Well, very good. Lynette, I appreciate your time. And in the spirit of that movie, 28 Days Later, we should probably revisit this thing in another month. And we'll know a lot more. We'll know a lot more 28 days from now than we do right now.
Oh, yes. We are living through interesting times, and I will be happy to be back and have this conversation with you in 28 days.
All right. Thanks, Lynette.
Thank you, Sean.
All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. A shout out to our patrons. Thanks for keeping us in the fight for truth and real news, despite the attacks against us by literally the Wall Street Journal, a hit piece against me and Mike Adams for daring to question the true source of COVID-19. God forbid anybody in this country actually do real journalism. Oh, I'm telling you guys, thanks so much for your support. And for real news 24/7, you can visit us directly at sgtreport.com, the antidote to corporate propaganda and Mockingbird Wall Street Journal lies. God bless. Bye-bye.
I believe, as populists have believed for a long time, that we should repudiate the national debt. Now, no politician is going to have the guts to do that, but this is banker debt. It's not people's debt. And I resent being myself and my family, my children and grandchildren, being saddled with this.